You're listening to Parasearch Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio. Parasearch Radio, broadcasting to the UK and beyond.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Haunted Histories with your host Penny G. Morgan, right here on Parasearch Radio.
And a very warm welcome to Haunted Histories tonight. It's Wednesday. It's your host and history and hauntings, Penny G. Morgan. I hope everyone's well and nobody got pranked too much on April the 1st on Monday. It was Monday, wasn't it? Can't remember my days now. I think it was Monday. I know I just stay in the house until after 12 o'clock just to be on the safe side, but then I get pranked by the Americans when they come online, so can't win. Anyway, what have you all been up to? I was lucky enough to go and see historian Dan Snow do a presentation last week, and I know that's not hauntings and stuff, but he was very good, very funny, and when he was being asked questions at the end, he was very, very eloquent. I was very impressed, and I got to meet him as well, and he's a very nice man. You never know, maybe he'll be asking for a copy of one of my books sometime, or coming to one of my presentations. That would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? So, what else have we been up to? Well, we've still got all our channels that you can follow. So you've got Spreaker, you've got YouTube. You can go on there, click like, share, and subscribe to make sure you get all the shows coming out 5 days a week. I was on actually the Supernatural show on Monday, chatting with my gorgeous girls Gemma and Jo, and we were talking about the book, and we were talking about Drakelow tunnels that Jo had finally popped her Drakelow cherry and got into, and she's fallen in love with the place as well. It has that effect on us haunted people, Drakelow tunnels. You can't say no to it. But another person you can't say no to, well, I probably could say no to him if I really had to, but I don't like to, is my guest tonight. And my guest tonight is he was on telly last night. He was on the One Show last night. It's Mr. Paul Stevenson.
Hello, good evening.
Boss, how you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. Well, you were on the One Show last night, weren't you?
I was on the One Show, yes. I was on the One Show. Strange week, really, like you said. I had a phone call on Monday afternoon saying, basically, have I got news for you? New series starts on Friday. Your magazine was featured on the last series. Do you want to come in and play a game with Paul and Ian? Luckily, they rang after 3 o'clock, because if it wasn't before midday, I would have assumed it was April Fool's joke, but it wasn't. So basically, long story short, got the train down, in makeup, got some brow gel on, and was on the One Show for about 3 or 4 minutes and loved every minute of it.
And even managed to crack one of your horrific dad jokes.
Yes. Well, they basically said was, there's no script apart from the main script. Paul and Ian will ask you questions. They don't know what they'll ask yet, so we can't tell you what to say. So I thought, well, I'll use what I do best and use my defence mechanism in all things in life, humour. So that's what I did. So there you go.
I did watch it. Yeah, you're a bit of a pain, aren't you, Paul?
Yeah, I'm very much pain, yes.
Because anyone who didn't see it, I think you can go and catch it on iPlayer, but
yes.
They were they were having to guess who was the editor of each individual. There was 3 magazines, wasn't there? One was to do with window cleaning, teddy bears, and obviously Haunted. And they had to guess who was the who was the editor of each, and I think they got the window cleaner guy straight away. There was
Hang on, yeah, he must have a
question.
sham in his back pocket or something.
It must be, but it was the who was teddy bear, because they thought you looked like a bit of a teddy bear.
Exactly, so I'm a cuddly, so yeah, that's what's probably why. So, but yeah, they got Lee right, but they got Jill and myself mixed the wrong way around.
Yeah,
I actually said to Jill before, because most ghost hunters, people go to events, are maybe mainly female, they may assume that you're the editor of Haunted. But no, it was really good to promote the magazine. It's free exposure, so it was really nice.
Definitely. Even more so now I'm writing for you. I'm quite happy. Get all the exposure we can get, mate.
Listen, it's nice to go on television, as representing a magazine, but the magazine, the magazine's about, it's the writers and the friends and the people who love it. It's for them, really. So it's getting better every issue. We're learning every issue. It's just one of the things that, even though we say it's the best issue yet, we want to improve every issue, get more stuff out, more facts, more history, more paranormal. We love doing it, and we always say, if you love doing it, it's going to work out.
It's good fun, isn't it? I must admit, when I was talking to Andy, Andy Saw, for anyone who doesn't realise, Andy does all the graphics and the design work and everything else.
Yes.
And I was chatting to him the other day, and it was before I submitted my article for the next issue. And he said, when I saw the article that I had to design the thing for, with the one the Ghost Cavalry one, he went, I was just like, the hell am I supposed to do with this?
Yes.
And I said, well, you're going to love the one I've sent. And I told him the one I'd sent through to you for the next article, and he was just like, oh God.
The thing is, right, with Andy, when Andy first, 2011, Andy joined the magazine as designer, and I used to leave him notes, say what I would like, and I think this would be better. Now I just pass him the article and say, look, do what you got to do, because the guy's a genius. He just comes up with templates that I think would work, and I don't tell him that, but he just does it bang on, and very rarely we have to do a second attempt, second draft. It's just something.
He did the cover to my book, and
he
it was
did.
First attempt, and I was just like, I love it. I absolutely love it.
And we seem to gel. I pass him the stuff, and he does it, and it's just amazing how it works. So yeah. So the magazine's going from strength to strength. So thank you to everybody who reads and buys it and reads it and listens to it, whatever. But it's also free online, if I may say that.
It is, yeah.
It's we're loving it. We love doing it. Even though on April 1st we did April Fool about we were finishing.
And you're doing a magic magazine on sex and witches.
Yes. And people clicked on the link and I got you. But anyway, it's April the 1st. What you got to do?
Well, I must admit, the first I saw that, not realising what the time was, and I was like, I did actually think, you bastards, I've got articles lined up to send through to you. And then as soon as I started to think about it and I saw who'd actually posted that, I was like, yeah, whatever. I'll keep sending them in. I don't care. I could do witchy history.
We've talked about history many times, you and I, Pen, and history and the paranormal go hand in hand to us.
I think so.
Without history, you wouldn't have paranormal, and vice versa. And we also talked about history that you can record, history that's documented, and also paranormal history that may or may not be recorded, but still may exist. Yeah.
Verbal history, almost.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I ain't going changing anytime soon. So I think I've mapped out about 6 articles for you that I've got ideas for. So there you go.
No, perfect.
I say ideas, then I've got to go away and do the research to write the darn things. But they keep changing as well. What shall I do next? And then somebody will say something, and I'll get a new idea, and I was like, damn it, there's another one added to the list.
Well, the beauty of it is that you write about features that may or not be people may know about, because it's all very well writing about something that people know about, but you seem to hit it on the nail on the head where I didn't know about the Ghost Cavalry. I knew about the next one, but I didn't know about Ghost Cavalry, and it's just something that you can pick up, you can read, and it's interesting.
Yeah, I guarantee that there'll be a lot of people who don't know about the one I've just written. They will think of it on the other thing that I made a joke about in the article. So
wait till the tagline.
Sorry?
Wait to get the tagline in the magazine.
Oh, don't you like my title I gave it?
No, wait, I should have waited to see it said.
Don't you go changing my title, because then that ruins my first paragraph. No, you better not change my title, because that ruins the start of my article.
Wait till the sea.
Am I going to be angry with you, Stevenson?
No, you won't be angry. That's what I'm telling you. You won't be angry.
Okay.
Yeah, we normally change it, you see, but I said wait till the sea this time.
Well, all I'll say is all my life, I've been searching for something. Something never comes, never leads to nothing.
Shh, don't give too much away.
I've been dying to do that. Anyway, and you're on you've been on the one show, but you're also on your shows have started going out on Vidispace.
Yes,
well.
we have.
You're in good company there, Mr. Johnny Hauser, Josh Hurd, all those kind of people.
Our station bosses are Nick Groff and Elizabeth Saint, so we're happy.
Name drop that one again.
Yes. The thing is, though, is like Vidispace, yeah, it may not be a TV channel, but to be honest, we don't care. We are, people call it, or I've called it, Netflix for the paranormal. It's nowhere near as big as Netflix, but you never know, things may happen. And we just love the fact that we've got our show, Haunted Live, on Vidispace. It can be watched by people who love the paranormal all over the world. Yep. So it's something that we love, and we said yes. Well, we sent it to them. They liked it, and we said, yeah, we'd love to do some more. So next one's out, I think April the 12th. I'm not 100% sure, but Friday night, April the 12th, episode 3.
Cool. Well, what we're talking about today, and I know we've spent 6-7 minutes off on a tangent. Cheeky saying I'm
your fault.
Yeah, it's always my fault, isn't it, Paul? The fact I told you that I'd been to the gym to work the muscles, so to prevent us going off on this tangent. You're as bad as I am, Stevenson. It's not all my fault. But we're going to be talking about a place. Now, all I'll say to people is if you haven't heard of this place, don't just go, oh, it's going to be boring. This place has got a past which even I was blown away when I started researching its past. Okay, and that's an honest. I mean, my husband can attest to the fact. If he was here, he could turn around and say, last night he heard me on the laptop going, oh, bloody hell, when some of the stuff I was finding out about this place. And the place concerned is somewhere called Bosworth Hall. Now, tell me where Bosworth Hall is, Paul.
It's in a place called Market Bosworth, which is in Leicestershire.
Leicestershire. So, what's its next nearest big town?
Hinckley, Nuneaton,
so
that
Coventry-ish sort of.
Yes, Coventry. Yeah, it's on the border. On the border, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, how much do you know of its background, its history, Paul?
Well, this is my thing with you, Pam, because the show is Haunted History, right? And every time I've come on before, I've done some research because I thought, it's best to be research with you being a history lady. So I thought, you know what? This time I'm going to do no research because I could say to you, by the way, did you know that in 1835 a guy called Jim White was hung outside Bosworth Hall, and you'd say yes, it was a Friday night. It was 6:35 p.m. and it was
a pint of beer before he went up on the scaffold.
So whatever I do, you usurp me. So I've thought, sod it, I'm going to have all I'm going to know is what I know from the ghost hunting side of it. So, to be fair, I did research when we first went to Bosworth Hall to investigate, so I know something, but I know you're going to blow me away with the rest anyway, so you just go ahead.
Just for the record, there wasn't a Jim Smith or Jim White, whatever it was you said, hung outside there. That's he's being sarcastic. As far as I know, nobody was hung at Bosworth Hall. Right. Unless you know different.
No, I don't. That's
all right then. That's all right.
No.
Although there is a death at Bosworth Hall, which I'm going to mention, and I haven't found unequivocal proof that death happened, but I have found the evidence surrounding it to indicate it could have happened. But we'll talk about that one in a bit. Okay, so Bosworth Hall itself, the actual hall, which is now a hotel and conference centre.
It's a living, breathing hotel owned by Big Hotels, yes.
Well, the land itself that it's on, or the borough of Bosworth, for want of a better term, was originally bought by someone with a rather amazing name of Sir Wolston Dixie back in 1589. Now, he was the first. Well, actually, no. I think it was his nephew was the first baronet, but he bought the land back in 1589. But his major role, he was the mayor of London. So he never really did anything in Bosworth. It was kind of just land that he owned and all of that kind of thing. Now, the reason I'm mentioning him, because the house itself wasn't built for about 100 years, until about 100 years later. But the reason I'm mentioning Woolston the First, for want of a better term, is he sounds like he was a really bloody lovely man. He died having no children. He'd been married twice, never had any children. And he actually left Bosworth to his great-nephew, Woolston Dixie II, for want of a better term, who was actually, I believe, the first baronet, that had the first title. But this man was so nice, the first Woolston Dixie. I mean, what a name, Woolston Dixie.
I know, lovely, isn't it?
It's brilliant.
It's one of those things it's just one of those things that really stands out, isn't it? You know what I mean?
It's lovely. I love the name. Well, Dixie as well as a surname.
Yeah,
I just think the whole thing it's like something an author would make up, but this is real.
It is. Yeah,
anyway,
it is.
so when he died, he left a load of an annuity to a place called Christ's Hospital. Now, Christ's Hospital wasn't actually a hospital; it was a school, and it still exists now. And he left an annuity, so an income, to the school, and this school was set up following the dissolution of the monasteries, because so many children who would have been helped by the monasteries were being dumped on the streets, and so they created this school so that these kids could get an education and be safe, which I think is pretty bloody awesome for the 1500s.
Yeah.
He also left money to St Bart's and St Thomas's hospitals, which again, pretty cool. He also left money, which is amazing. He also left money to Bridewell Prison and Newgate Prison in London, and Southwark and Ludgate. And he left money to what was called the Compters. And it's not a spell check, because when I put it in on Google to find out what a Compter was, it kept saying, "Do you mean computer?" No, I mean Compter. And Compter was a small-scale prison that was run by the local sheriff for the provision of debtors and things like that. So not your hardcore sort of, well, hardcore criminals back in those days would be someone who's stolen a loaf of bread. So not thieves and murderers and stuff, but people who owed money and had to be, well, they'd committed an offence by owing money. So he left money to them. He also left money to Bedlam, the Bethlehem, the mental hospital.
Mm-hmm.
He also left money to the French and Dutch strangers. Now, anyone who's listened to any of my past shows or read my book will have heard me mention a place called Strangers' Hall in Norwich, which was where a load of the Dutch strangers lived when they came over from the lowlands, when they were being persecuted. He left money to these people as well. He also left money to build something called a pest house. Do you know what a pest house is? This is very cool.
I would guess that it's a house of pests.
It's not a house of boy bands, no. It's actually a hospital for people with infectious diseases like the plague and stuff. Mm-hmm. And this was all back in the late 1500s, it was late 1500s, and he was establishing all of these in his will.
It's interesting, you mentioned, sorry, Pen, you mentioned prisons, and that's interesting because obviously, there's a prison connection with Bosworth Hall,
which I'm going to get on to.
Okay, I'll zip my lips.
We're talking about Charles Tollemache Scott and what he put down in the cellar.
Yes, well, there's actually there's two doors from said prison, but you carry on.
You're jumping forward 250 years. Slow down. Right. Anyway, this is before the house was built. All this was happening, and I just think when I start to mention some of the other Dixies who came after him, he sounds like a pretty decent dude. He sounds like a nice guy. Not many people would have left money to the prisons. Now, he didn't leave money to the prisons so much for the prisoners. It was more for the poor people who were being imprisoned because they had nowhere else to go. It was to help them. It was for benefit to the poor, as opposed to, like some killer who was going to be hung. It was more for the people who were destitute and had nothing and ended up in prison because of those reasons. He wanted to help. It's almost like early rehabilitation, if you like. And I just think he sounds like a really decent man. He sounds like someone who really cared about his city of London, of which he was the mayor. So I would love to learn more about him, actually, because he sounds like a really nice guy.
In the 1500s, they're very different times, and so to have somebody of that do that is pretty good, I must admit. Yeah. And I guess you mentioned that obviously Dixie this and Dixie that. But look at the Byrons. I mean, I know we're diversifying, but there was a mad one, an angry one, a nasty one, and a nice one. So it just shows that just because we've got the same name, we don't have to be the same type of personality. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, so this guy, this Walton Dixie is
the first.
I know more about the second one, but the first one is something that is in those times was amazing. Really,
I think that kind of benevolence. In the late 1500s is pretty.
Exactly.
It's pretty amazing, and he does sound. I'd be very disappointed to read he was actually an arsehole, because to me, leaving money to those kind of things.
Yes.
To be fair, he didn't have children. He both his wives had died without having children. There's a few of the Dixies who died without immediate offspring, but it could be some kind of genetic fertility issue running through the line. I don't know. Or it could be, which is what I think with a couple of them, that they were homosexual. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but obviously back then there would have been. They would have still had to have a wife to keep up appearances. I don't know. I'm speculating here. But he sounds like a nice guy. So, the house was built, it started being built in 1680. It was finished around 1690, and anyone Google the picture, it's a beautiful Grade 2 listed property.
Beautiful, yeah.
What's the first thing that strikes you about it when you first see it?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Well, on the road before you turn right into the drive up to it, you see the water feature. You see sort of like the side of the house rather than the actual front, the steps. So when you get to the car park, as it is now, you see the massive steps leading up to what it would probably be in back in the day the main entrance, but it's not the hotel main entrance, which is really good. But yeah, it's just even from turning right into where it says "This is welcome to Bosworth Hall." The trees are split beautifully that you can just see one wing of the bedroom, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's just for us, it's just an iconic location and something that when we got asked to investigate. The first one was Halloween 2017. We did a recce in the summer, and it just blew our minds, to be fair.
It does look amazing. I must admit, I've looked at some of the pictures, and I've looked at some of the old sort of postcard pictures from 1920. I think I found some, and it does look. It does. It doesn't surprise me it became what it became in the 1930s, because it looks like it could be a very grand version of that, and we're going to get onto that one.
Yeah.
The next baronet I'm going to mention was the 4th baronet. He was also a Woolston Dixie, but he was... I'm going to use the only word I've actually written notes down next to it to remind myself which one he is. The arsehole. He that's the only way I can describe him. He read anything about him. The 4th baronet. He wasn't a nice man. He used to like using his fists to resolve issues. He was also very can't think of the word now. The word's gone out of my head. But he from what I can understand, from what I've read, it was his way or the highway with everything.
Yes, that's what we found. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the chief trustee of the local school, which is known as the Dixie Grammar School, I believe. He was the chief trustee, and so he would basically say who he wanted working there and who he didn't. And he actually was the one who employed Samuel Johnson to work at the school, even though Samuel Johnson, as much as a scholar as he is now, we know now, a religious scholar and everything else, he didn't have a degree. He didn't have a university degree, and one of the prerequisites to work at this school was you had to have a university degree. But apparently Dixie wanted him, therefore Dixie got him. But also, because there was various reasons, normally the schoolmaster would lodge at the school. For some reason Samuel Johnson didn't. He lodged at Bosworth Hall. And judging by the reports, he lasted about 3 months before he quit. And he supposedly, from the writings that I've seen from Johnson, he quit because of Dixie. He was just he couldn't work with him. He just couldn't cope with him. But that's pretty fast to quit your job after 3 months.
Definitely, yeah.
There's also an amusing story I found, and that when Dixie the 4th, should we call him, was being introduced to the then king, and the king asked him where he was from. He said, "Oh, I'm from Bosworth." And the king, trying to be all sort of knowing his people and knowing his country, said, "Ah, the site of the Battle of Bosworth." And Dixie, being the arrogant prick that he was, assumed that he meant a fist fight he had had recently with another landowner who was arguing with Dixie because Dixie wouldn't let him access his farm using his land, and they'd had a fist fight, and that was the battle that Dixie thought the king was talking about, not an ancient battle from sort of like 500 years beforehand. So this was the kind of guy he was. Now it's him who links into one of the famous ghost stories.
Yes, it is.
You know what I'm talking about?
I do. His daughter, Anne.
Anne,
yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, just going back to, you mentioned Wollston not being an arsehole in life.
Dixie the Fourth. We got to be.
Yeah, Dixie the Fourth. Yes.
Yeah.
Dixie the Fourth. We have obviously done a few ghost hunts there now, and we always seem to come across a nasty, rude entity in various locations in Bosworth Hall. So, there is reason to believe that if you're an arsehole in life, you're an arsehole in death.
Exactly.
Exactly
that. Yeah.
We've not obviously had it confirmed that he is the spirit of Wollston and Dixie the Fourth, but what you're saying makes sense now because of what we've heard and had said to us and via various gadgets and stuff. So It's interesting, that Pen. Yeah, very.
Yeah. I'd say it probably is Dixie the Fourth you're encountering. I mean, this story and right. I'm gonna do a caveat on this. Some parts of this I cannot confirm. I have not found official confirmation on when I was researching. Other bits of it I have. So we know it is fact that Dixie the Fourth, aka arsehole, was married 3 times. We also know it's fact that his first wife died giving birth to her 3rd child. Her 3rd child was Anne. Okay, so this is fact. We know this for fact. Anne had a sister, Rebecca, and a brother, Wollston. Wollston ended up taking over the estate on his father's death. But we know that for a fact, that Anne's mum's name was Anna. She died while giving birth or shortly after the birth of Anne. Not uncommon in those days. Not uncommon until really 50 years ago when hygiene practices for birth and everything changed.
Mm-hmm.
This is fact. We know this, and I've double-checked this on all the genealogy sites and everything else. Anne's mum, Anna, died the same year that Anne was born. So it doesn't take a genius to work out they were linked.
Yeah.
I have also found that Anne Dixie died at the age of 19. That's fact. Now, she is meant to have died. Her abrupt and obnoxious and slightly, rather bullish father found out that young Anne, 19-year-old Anne, was dating a local yeoman farmer's son. And this was beneath her station. And I'll tell you why I'm questioning some of this in a minute, though. But this was beneath her station. She shouldn't have been dating a farmer's son, let alone a yeoman farmer's son. And he knew they were meeting these woods that was near the house, and so he decided to set a man trap there, basically like one of those giant poacher traps, but a bear trap, or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And these things are pretty harsh. Even with today's medicine, you probably wouldn't live for very long unless you got treatment very, very quickly. And Anne is meant to have gone rushing into the woods to warn her beau that this trap was around, and got caught in the trap herself. She was then brought back to the house and subsequently died of her injuries. Can't find proof of that, the trap incident, the fact that she was dating a farmer. I can find proof that Anne did actually die at the age of 19, and she's meant to have died in Bosworth Hall.
Yeah. Well, this is right what you're saying. We have, again, we were told there's 2 versions really. She was seeing a gardener, who lived near to Bosworth Hall, mm-hmm. And tended the gardens at Bosworth Hall. And Wollston, Dixie the Fourth was angry that she was classed as dating, as you say, beneath the station, mm-hmm. And he set a man trap for him. So during one of the clandestine meetings, he would get caught. But as you say, she got caught. And we have two versions. That one, she died there, and one she was taken to back to her room in Bosworth. Obviously bled to death and died in the actual hall. So, like you said, we know there's no evidence or documentation of this, but she did die at 18, 19. You said, yeah, no cause of death. No cause of death at all, or
no, they didn't really have death certificates back
no.
then. You'd have to look at, you'd have to get into parish records and all that kind of thing, which I'd actually have to travel to Market Bosworth to get hold of.
It's interesting to see. Obviously, it's interesting to see though where a myth like that would perpetuate from, though, wouldn't it? If it's not true, or not some kind of factual thing.
Yeah. I mean, the things that don't concern me about the story. Because he ended up having 10 children in all. I think he had 7 with his second wife. So, from the law of probability, at least one of them wasn't going to make it to an old age. Even with a sort of upper class who's going to get food and water and shelter and all the things that the lower classes didn't get. What confuses me about this story is we're talking 1700s. A girl of 19 in the 1700s would have been married for probably about 4 years by that point and already had a couple of children. Normally, 19. Secondly, supposedly the man trap is still in existence and some other family has got it as a souvenir. I don't know. I don't know. But also, urban myths like that can start very easily. And they can also start by someone like Dixie himself starting it, like, don't mess with me because I know this killed my daughter, but it could have killed you, kind of thing. That kind of sort of bravado and I have my. It's just as likely she rode into the woods at speed to warn her boyfriend that he knew that they were seeing each other and fell off a horse. Yeah, that's more likely. But it's not quite as sort of intimidating as your dad's laid a great big bear trap.
No, I mean, there are lots of woods, there are lots of paths around the area. So, it's like you said before, it's without any documented evidence, it can be confirmed one way or the other. I guess that's the beauty of the paranormal in a lot of cases, to be fair. I mean, we did a vigil in the Dixie Suite where she allegedly was taken to and bled to death. And on one of the devices we had the word "Anne" come up straight away, the first word that came up on one of the boxes. Random or not, we just don't know.
No, that's pretty cool.
So it's. I mean, as I said, we've heard two or three versions of the story, and obviously you've heard a fourth one now. So about the not a gardener, but a farmer.
Yeoman farmer's son. Yeah.
I think personally, from my point of view, there's some truth to it, but I think it's a mix of fiction in it as well.
My gut feeling is, I mean, like I say, in that day and age, to be 19 and be unmarried, very unusual. Very unusual. But she did die at 19. According to the records, she did die at Bosworth Hall. So there is truth in that side, and he did have a daughter called Anne. That's fact. So it's possible. It's possible he could have done that, but wouldn't the sort of the local sheriff have had something to say about the fact he deliberately set a trap that killed his own daughter?
Maybe he thought it was above the law.
Now.
And also, exactly, speculation. It's the name of the paranormal game. But sometimes, if he's good with his fists, why not fisticuff the young chap? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
If that's going to be it. But you're right. It's something.
But she definitely did. There was a man who died at the age of 19, who was Dixie the Fourth's daughter.
Well, what we need now is on the next event at Bosworth, we need Anne to come through and tell us the truth.
Yep.
Because that way we'll know for sure.
We will.
So she can say, well, that Penny on that radio show, she's not far wrong, that lad.
Believe me, it's happened before. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward a couple of hundred years now, because it was quite quiet for a couple of hundred years, or 150 years. family just went about, the Dixie family just inherited it and passed it on and inherited it and passed it on. And then we got to back in 1880, it was actually, or the 1880s, it was sold to pay gambling debts by the 11th Dixie baronet. Now, he had rather a ridiculous name, to be quite honest, and I can't even remember. I know it was Sir Alexander Beaumont something or other, but he was known, his nickname was Sir ABCD, because those were his initials. Yes. That's why he was called Sir ABCD. Now, he was married to an amazing lady by the name of Florence Douglas Dixie. Now, Florence Douglas Dixie, which is a bit of a, let's call her Flo, because it's just easier, she was a pretty amazing lady. Not only was she, her brother, I think it was who the term the Queensberry Rules in boxing was named after.
Yes.
She's also got connections with Oscar Wilde, in the fact that her nephew was incredibly close to Oscar Wilde, and so his dad actually sent some message accusing Wilde of being, well, he didn't call him a sodomite. I think it was some like a sodononymite or something he spelt it as. But anyway, and Wilde sued him for slander, and it was actually her nephew that caused Wilde's downfall and his ultimate incarceration and death. See what I mean? This is a book in this, isn't it?
It definitely is.
But so Florence, not only was she a writer, she was an early suffragette. Now, people think the suffragettes didn't start till the 1900s. Oh, no. There were suffrage movements for 200 years before then. Mary Wollstonecraft was one of the famous ones, who was the mother of Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein. There you go. I was having to think of the names then, because I'm ad-libbing now. Yeah, I'm dredging the memory banks, going, what was that bloody name again? Anyway, so suffrage movement had been going a lot longer than people may realise when they think of the Pankhursts and the early 1900s and the cat and mouse games that the police played with the suffragettes. But Florence was in a suffrage movement. She was part of the suffrage movement. She was also a writer, and she was also an explorer, amongst other things. Amazing lady. I've really enjoyed reading about her. In fact, I could probably talk about her for the next half an hour, and I'm not going to. But she was married to Sir ABCD, we'll call him. But Sir ABCD, or Sir Beau, as he was also known, had a bit of a problem with the old alcohol. He also had a bit of a problem with gambling, and the debts got so bad that they had to sell Bosworth, probably to stop him being lynched, really, which was very embarrassing for Lady Florence with the background that she had. Although we were talking about, we talked about the the poet you mentioned earlier, the whole family, there was a nice one, a nasty one, the poet, the Byrons. Yes. Similar thing in her family. Her father is reported to have shot himself due to mental illness. She had a twin brother who was so devastated when she got married and left him, he actually abducted a young girl to keep him company and ended up being sectioned, or what we'd call sectioned, now for the rest of his life. And was a manic depressive. It's sort of her whole family. I mean, I'm telling you, so much information there to look at.
You've obviously known, but we found out she was also she liked the sports with the boxing side. But
she did. Yeah.
We found out she was involved in the Women's Football Association.
Really? I didn't read that. Yeah. Well, then again, I don't like football, so I'd have probably glossed over that anyway. If it said rugby, I would have been like, go girl, but football.
Sure. Well, yeah, I can't remember what it was, 1890. She became president of the British Ladies Football Club, something like that. And she was, and that's what the FA evolved to. So yeah, she was a definitely
amazing
good
lady.
character, and she loved her animals. She loved dogs.
Yep.
There was a pet cemetery in Bosworth with 3 or 4 graves of her dogs. And also I think there's a green plaque now on the entrance to Bosworth that mentions Lady Flo.
There is, yeah, a blue plaque. Was it green or a blue one?
Green or blue, I can't remember.
They're normally blue, aren't they? The blue plaques that mention famous people.
I'm sure. I don't know why, unless I'm colourblind. I'm sure it's green.
I've not seen it, but I've seen a picture of it.
I can't remember now.
You'll have to look for me next time.
Yeah, I will do. But yeah, so obviously she was very, no matter the history of Bosworth, she was probably the one. Obviously, they've got a plaque there for a reason. So, she was definitely liked her hunting, liked her sports. She was a writer, feminist. So, yes, it's a very interesting lady.
Amazing woman. But it was. I think they moved. I want to say Scotland, or was it Wales? They moved.
Yeah, we found out Scotland.
Yeah. Scotland, yeah. But yeah, so they had to sell the house to pay off Sir ABCD's debts. I can't blood. This is getting hard now. Her stupid husband's debts, and then they had to move. And the house was then bought by a guy by the name of Charles Tollemache Scott. And this is where these cell doors we were talking come in, because he did a lot of renovations to the place, didn't he?
He did, yes.
Tell me, what did he bring in, and what are they like, and can you see them, and has anything happened near them?
Yes, I'll answer those questions, maybe not in the right order that you've asked them, but yes, there are 2 doors from Newgate Prison. One's in the cellar, and one is actually open in the Newgate Bar, and there's a plaque above it saying this was constructed or given by someone in 1900-something, and yes, activity has happened, and it's a strong, massive black cell door, and it's heavy, and it looks absolutely bloody spooky, because I can imagine what was behind it back in the days. I've always found it weird. When I first did the recce there, I've always found it weird how there's a prison door just in a pub, in a Newgate bar. Obviously it's called Newgate Bar for a reason, but when we got to explain the history about it, and the Tollemache Scott, like you said, it doesn't make sense, but in a way. But yeah, not many hotels have got prison doors as the entrance to the bars, I imagine.
Bob in jail probably will have when it's renovations there are finished.
Yeah, probably. But it's fascinating. It's just another chink of amazing history that links what you said about, right from back in the day from the first Wolston to the 350 years later. Yeah, it's amazing.
So what sort of things have happened when you've been near? You got anything through when you've been near the doors, or is it just they're spooky?
It's just the spooky, but also I mentioned this dark, arrogant entity. It's just in some areas because it's a living, breathing hotel. There's obviously lots of places we aren't allowed, but because it's full of people, when we do the investigation, energy comes from all sources, and it just appeared. We've had a few times where in the cellar, we went in the cellar for the very first time before last, and it was just very dark and really nasty feeling. And if you believe in the theory that objects can hold energy, what energy can a Newgate prison door hold? You know what I mean? So the Newgate Bar one, it just seemed wherever we go, the air gets dark and aggressive. So maybe it's the door, maybe it's Dixie the arse, the arsehole.
I knew who you meant, Dixie the arse. That's fine.
Yeah, Dixie the arse.
Yeah.
I just shortened it for us.
He's going to beat me up when I go there, isn't he?
He is, isn't he?
I've called him Dixie the arse.
I tell you.
I'm going to be in trouble.
But yeah, it's just I'm a lover of history as you are, Pen, and just to have those 2 doors is just a great bullet point. You can tell people when we do the tour around. You know what I mean? People taking pictures of it, and it's just something you don't expect to see, really.
Well, whether it is, I mean, it's a very weird thing to have in the fact that it was actually this guy's house when he installed them. So was it to pay homage to the original Dixie who did all that work in London? Or do you think, I mean, we don't even know if Scott knew anything about it. I mean, this is one of the things, when I found this out when I was doing my research last night, I was kind of running out of time. But it's one of the things that I've made a note to try and find out more about, because it's a weird thing to do. And if it had been one of Wolston's descendants doing it, I could kind of understand it, because they'd have known that their great whatever was the Lord Mayor of London and had left money to all these sources, and Newgate Prison was one of them, and Newgate Prison was being demolished, so they wanted a bit of it to remember the fact that he had helped people who were there.
that would be nice to think that, wouldn't it? That would be nice.
But
Because,
Scott had nothing to do with that. He just happened to buy a house.
I know. And it's different. It's not even family. So
No.
in those days, back in the day when Tollemache would have renovated the house, would history stuff be as accessible as is for us now or not?
Don't know.
You know what I mean? So would he
Unless
know?
he had some links to Newgate when it was the only thing I could think of, and you would probably know more about this than me. No, that sounds wrong. Because of Haunted Magazine, you would know more about this than me. is obviously that was during the Victorian era. And the Victorian era is when they loved. That's when the whole spiritualist and seancey and all that started. It makes me wonder if Tollemache Scott had some kind of involvement in that and thought this would. I don't know. I mean, there's so many questions. One of the problems when I'm sometimes doing research is I get more blooming questions than I get answers, because I'm thinking, well, this is really a weird thing to do. It's a cool thing to do, and for us, sort of 200 years later, it's bloody awesome. But why do it? And I'm wondering if, say, Victorian era, they liked that whole gothic-y sort of spiritualist. Maybe Scott was a spiritualist, sort of. Maybe he held seances there. Who knows?
I know he was. I mean, maybe so. I mean,
you know where I'm going. You know what I mean, don't you? You know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, I know where you're going. I mean, I say it was the height of popularity for spiritualism, and I think we've found. I'm not sure how many they are, but we've found a few initials, CTS initials, on a few parts of Bosworth, outside and inside.
Oh,
so obviously he liked to leave his mark there.
Yeah.
So maybe it was something that maybe he did. We can find out from Bosworth Hall the exact truth. Maybe he designed the doors. You just or maybe he was part of the construction company that did that. That emptied the Newgate prison. You just never know. So it's but it's just fascinating. But it's. When you come down to have a look, you'll see these doors, and they're massive as well. They're really big and chunky. It's, you can just imagine what they've experienced. I mean, I don't know how the doors are, if they were the original doors from whatever, but they must have some history.
Seen something. They've seen something. They've seen, or they've absorbed fear or an emotion, and maybe guilt, and maybe innocence as well. You just yeah. Well, let's fast forward another 50 years or so. And the house went under various different ownerships. But then in 1931, it was bought by, well, what we would call probably Leicestershire Council, and it was opened as a hospital on the 15th of July 1936. Now, anyone who doesn't know their history or is quite young will probably be going, so, it was a hospital, 1936. Big deal. This was before the NHS. The NHS wasn't to come till about 11, 12 years later. So this was a hospital that was being opened pre-NHS, so would have been run on donations, and it was actually part of the Ashby. A lot of the records are part of the Ashby Poor Laws, which were what would govern the workhouses and all of that kind of thing. Which, interestingly enough, is where a lot of hospitals started. A lot of hospitals that, well, a lot of them have been pulled down now, unfortunately, because they don't meet health and safety and all those things, but they were the actual infirmary units of a workhouse, because for a lot of people the only access you would ever get to a hospital is if you were in the workhouse and you were then put in the infirmary. Now, most people didn't come out because it was kind of more of a it wasn't what you'd call proactive care. It was kind of just to nurse you until basically you died. But that's why as people of a certain age would, if they saw a hospital, they'd refuse to go in it because they'd think it was the workhouse infirmary. And that's a true fact. And I have a few of my elderly clients I deal with in my day job who are still a bit like that. They see certain buildings and they get scared because that was the infirmary for the workhouse when they were younger. So it was turned into a hospital, predominantly a long-term care type facility. So lots of geriatric patients and people who were going to, not sort of in 1 week out the other. But I did find some records written by people who were around during then, who sort of said if there was a surgeon, if a child needed their tonsils removing, for example, the surgeon would come in for the day, do loads of operations and then go. They didn't have a resident surgeon. And they did have a very small maternity wing. I think they had 19 beds at most.
Yes, I've heard that, 19 beds.
Now, what I did find is the nurses' home. Now, you might understand this. The nurses' home is now what is known as St Peter's Court and the private residences. Do you know where that is in relation to the hall?
I don't know, so I'll write this down and I'll find it out.
Yeah, so that's what the nurses' home was. It said in the records it's now known as St Peter's Court, St Peter's Court and private residences. So we've got a hospital that's not state funded, that's donation funded and local authority funded, opening in July of 1936. Now, obviously 3 years after that, war broke out. And it was actually used as a military hospital, and a lot of Royal Electronic and mechanical engineers were treated there because they were training and working at somewhere called Bosworth Hall in the area. This is all stuff I learnt yesterday. It's all very interesting. I'm finding it very interesting. And so it was used a lot as a military hospital then. But then after the war, it became basically a geriatric and long-term care facility again with that small maternity unit. Now, what was really interesting when I was doing all this, apart from the fact you had a hospital that was set up pre-NHS, which they were around. I mean, again, this kind of links us back to the original Dixie. Because what was he funding money for? Hospitals.
Yeah, well, there's some kind of link there.
Isn't there just? It's like
whether it's preconceived or just pure luck.
Some kind of synchronicity.
Yeah.
But what was interesting, and I'm going to give you these names, because there was only ever 3 matrons for the whole 51 years that it was a kind of medical facility. There was only 3 women who were matrons. There was Mabel Stringer, Mabel Wilson, and Alice Mole. Now, I'm giving you those names because knowing what matrons are like, they're pretty entrenched in their jobs.
They are.
Wouldn't surprise me if you could speak to one of them.
Yeah, I will. I mean, we have, obviously, we do investigate in the part of the hotel that was the hall, that was part of the hospital and the infirmary. And at times we've had mediums there who've picked up on matrons and nurses and infirmary and also military during the war. You know what? And I seem to think, I have to check, but I seem to think we've had the word stringer come through. Now, at the time of when it came through, we just thought it was one of those random words, but I will check, and I'm sure stringer came through. But if you're saying it's one of the matrons, it would now make more sense. But yeah, I mean, we have lots of names coming through when we're in the hospital side of where the hospital was. Could be patients. We've had military, sergeant, wheelchair. Mediums have picked up on nurses and doctors. So I mean, now I've got those names, I will definitely try and make contact. But I know the lads will tell me, but I'm sure Stringer has come through recently.
Interesting to know. It'd be interesting to know. She was the matron. She was the hospital matron from 1936 to 1949.
So she basically saw 3 massive changes: the original hospital, the war, and the NHS.
Yep.
Yeah. So so she was basically the one who saw all those massive things that happened during that 15-year period.
And let's face it, the matrons in the olden days, they more or less ran the hospital.
Oh yeah.
I know the doctors did the sort of the technical work, if you like, but the matrons were the one that even the doctors were scared of. They didn't want to upset the matron. Yeah. So, but that would be very cool if the word stringer has come through.
You mentioned St Peter's Court. It's actually a place now. It's actually in Market Bosworth.
Right.
And it's now private residence for flats and that kind of thing. So, so it's not far from the hall, apparently.
Yeah, and that was the nurses. That was the nurses' quarters. That's where the nurses lived, who worked at the hospital. But I know that there was a photo you posted not so long ago after you did an investigation there with a curtain.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think one of the guests took it. Is there a shadow or something? You mean the last investigation or the time before?
I can't remember. It's the one that sort of went a bit viral on social media being shared.
Yes, I think, yes. I mean, you've done the research and, from Dixie the Nice in the 1500s, although there was no hotel there, and 600 years of history. From it seems to be nice, sad, nasty. There seems to be all kinds of traits of these Walston chaps.
Yeah.
And then it's now a hotel, as you say, but I can't imagine a hall. I mean, there are halls still there, but you may know, but I don't know many more halls that have had such a varied history as Bosworth has.
I do know a few, but most I could probably about 5 that I know of.
Yeah, which is rare. Yeah.
But when you think about how many sort of large halls and stately homes there are in the UK alone, I'll be honest with you, Paul. When you said you wanted to do a show on Bosworth Hall, and I was like, "Yep, fine. I love you to pieces. I trust you. You're gonna pick a good place." And I was thinking, oh, this is going to be boring. It's just going to be like family, sort of. It's going to be like a Catherine Cookson novel. It's not going to be very interesting. And then once all these sort of famous names start pinging out at me, so we've got the Queensberry Rules. You've got Florence Douglas Dixie. You've got the whole the man trap side of things. You've got the Doors from Newgate. You got Samuel Johnson mentioned. You've got the fact that there's the Dixie the Nice was the Lord Mayor of London and gave money to sort of Bridewell, Bedlam. As soon as it mentions the strangers of France and the Dutch lowlands, and I'm thinking, hell, I've done a show on that before. And it was all this stuff just started, and it was also nice because I learnt 2 new facts. I learnt what a pest house was and what a compter was. Always love that happening, and it was kind of, and like I say, I think we've only touched on it because we can.
I think we have.
We can go so much deeper into all the different incarnations.
I think there's definitely a booking it, like you said. But isn't it also interesting that if it was for sale in the 80s, why National Trust and Heritage didn't go in for it or buy it, or just because of the history, because of the iconicness of it, because obviously you've got a mile away, you've got Battle of Bosworth, where Richard III was killed.
Yeah.
So you'd have thought that, I don't know what happened in the 80s, whether English National Trust could bid for it or whatever, but you'd have thought a hall like that, although it's a working, living, breathing hotel and people visit, what a place would it have been to be a National Trust place or a heritage place? I
wonder if it had been too expensive to get it up to code, because I know I did read. Yeah, I don't know. I'm speculating because I know originally the hotel company that first took it on to refurb it went bust, and it was Britannia that then took it over to finish the work. So I don't know. I mean, it does strike me as strange, but then again, there's a lot of places. Coombe Abbey is another one.
Yeah,
that place is amazing. I've never looked into the history of it, but just the building itself. I mean, I know when I drove up there for the Paracon that we met at, and I stood in the car park for a good few minutes just going, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. At the building itself.
We were the same when we walked in, like, wow.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a Gothic lover's dream to walk into that place. So, and that amazes me that that's a hotel and not some kind of tourist facility, like you say, like a museum. But I never quite know what English heritage or historical houses or National Trust are actually looking for. I think National Trust tend to look at properties that have still got fixtures and fittings inherent, because that's more what their thing is. English heritage, though, it does amaze me, because the stories that place can tell. But
exactly,
let's just be grateful that National Trust don't own it, because if the National Trust did own it, we'd never get to investigate it. So,
well, that's true.
There are some pros in the whole thing.
You'd have thought, though, I don't know what the criteria is, the mandate is for English heritage to be able to say, this place has got history and heritage because of this, and then we want to keep it as a place that can't be made into a hotel or whatever. I mean, it is what it is now. It's a hotel. It's a great hotel. It's great people behind it, great team behind it, and we've got access to it, which is nice. But something of that, and now what you've said with the more detailed history of what you've said, that place is amazing. It's rich in history, and it's types of history as well, and it's on par with one of the best places we've ever been to. Also for looks and for the way it is, and what's in it and what's happened in it. And I would have thought that if possible, the heritage should have gone for it in the 80s. You never know.
Who knows? They may just not have had the funds for it at the time, or it wasn't fitting their business plan. But at least it's still functioning. It's still there. It's still available to be seen. It's not some private sort of company that have shut the gates on it, or private ownership, shall we say, that have shut the gates on it and said you can't enjoy it.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to seeing it sometime. I do definitely think there's a book in it. I have to look at some of the more of the spooky stories, but which is let's end on this note, Paul. Let's end on it, because we've talked about what's coming up in Haunted Mag soon. We've talked about Vidispace. We've talked about the Haunted Lives that go on, which we advertise on Parasearch for you anyway.
Thank you.
But when we look at Bosworth, where is the scariest part of that building?
You know what? People ask that, and it varies, because we're going in some rooms. The last investigation was last month at spring equinox, and 2 teams, one upstairs, one downstairs, and then we swapped over. And the rooms that we're in, one of them's experienced dark, nasty, aggressive energy in the bottom room, while at the top it was nice and nice messages and a feeling of calm and that kind of thing. When we swapped, it also swapped. So it's like something followed the team that experienced the dark. I mean, we've had shadows. We've had one of the people had a man follow her, or she said she saw a man following her, had to be escorted out of the group. So it makes sense. With you're talking about Dixie the Arsehole, things you've said make sense, and it's I can't actually put a finger on one room that's intense or most active, because each room seems to have its own merits, and it seems if there's something there, maybe it's following certain people around. You just don't know. But now you mention arsehole and aggressive and nasty and fisticuff man, it makes more sense to what we've heard and what we've seen and what the women have said. That they feel oppressed and they feel like there's somebody standing in the way. And I don't know if he had any respect for women or not, but he seems to target women.
I doubt it.
No, he seems to target women on the ghost hunts a lot more than he does the men. Some women have obviously got medium skills, and they say, there's a man here, he's telling me to F off, he don't like me, he shouldn't be here, that kind of thing. Some of the women who haven't got medium skills are saying, I'm crying out, I feel like there's somebody stood right in front of me, right in my face. So Paddy, you've hit the nail on the head. If this Wollstone Dixie the Fourth, the arse was as bad as it was, it could be him. We just don't know.
Probably. Probably. We never know, though, will we? Well, thank you ever so much, Paul. Don't be a stranger. You want to come back on again later this year?
Yeah, I'll find a location that you know nothing about. Which is impossible, really, let's be honest, isn't it?
Well, it isn't, because I didn't know anything about Bosworth until I started looking it up. So, but now we're going to get you on a live, though. We're going to get you on a live. Definitely.
And we're going to mix our two loves together, history and the paranormal, because we know they go hand in hand, and without one wouldn't have the other, and vice versa. But it's a pleasure to be on the show. Pleasure to be promoting the history of our great places.
Exactly, and the fun you can have in them. After
exactly.
dark.
Exactly.
There you go. Well, if anyone wants to get in touch with Paul, you can do through Haunted Mag, or contact him anyway. He's quite accessible, really, as long as you can. Just
search Haunted Magazine on social media.
As long as you can cope with the bad jokes. Just scroll on by some. Some of them are actually quite funny. Some of them do actually make me laugh, but a lot of them just make me go, "Oh, that hurts."
I know.
But
every now and then one every now and then one drops, and it's like, wow, bam, that was quite good. But
I think
most
the
of them
rock guitarist one made me laugh the other day about having a good jam.
Jams.
That made me laugh. And I think there was one the other day that did actually make me spit my drink out. It was quite dirty for you, and it actually made me spit my drink out. But but you can contact Paul. Obviously, Haunted Magazine, as he says, it is available in paper copies, but it is also available online for free, and you will see lots of names that you recognise, and hopefully that lots of people who've been on my show in the past as well will be on it. So do go and check that out. And on that note, thank you ever so much, Paul. I'm going to cut you off now. I'm going to cut you off. And yes, thank you ever so much for listening to Haunted Histories on Parasearch Radio. Don't forget we have shows on 5 nights of the week, all of which you can catch up on Spreaker. You can download them, you can listen to them, you can go onto YouTube as well as click, like, share, and subscribe. I don't do it nearly as well as Kerry does it. To make sure you listen to all the other shows. And next week I'm actually going to be talking to Rosie and Stuart Dawson from Simply Ghost Nights about a place that they've fallen in love with that you can stay at for 2 or 3 days. It's an old chapel in Belper, Derbyshire way, I think, and they love it, and they've had some very weird juju going on there, so looking forward to that one. Tomorrow night you've got the PSH radio show, and then on Friday night you've got the Dark Mirror show. God, we love you. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to love you and leave you and wish you a good evening, to sleep tight and not worry too much about things that go bump in the night.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.